Hey there, and welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming Podcast. It is great to have you join us. This podcast series features those who have gained victory over a life encounter. With that life experience, we encourage those who are experiencing something that might seem to be insurmountable. We advance and encourage others by passing forward evaluated life experiences. We have 3 objectives in this podcast series. We want to encourage those who are engaged in any type of life encounter by offering to walk with you to help you gain victory over anything that might seem impossible. We want to share our experience to help you. Our second objective is to help you develop a confident resolve that there are multiple options to get past any life obstacle. It's a matter of thinking into the situation. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you are facing a dilemma resulting from a previous decision you wish you could reverse, we want to help you think into all of the facts and factors involved in making an informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business manager, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture Company who is sponsoring this podcast series. Today we featured Janna Macik for a 3rd episode where she continues her testimony of raising her daughter Sharalene, who is nonverbal. She describes how she communicated with Sharalene through sign language. It was a matter of learning sign language and then communicating that to Sharalene and then adapting to whether Sharalene was communicating and understanding everything. It's very interesting to know how the brain operates through pictures, sign language, and just how all of this comes together. It's a fascinating story to learn. Persistence is one, but it's interesting how people can communicate through various means. It is a matter of persistence. But Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Janna and her interaction with Sharalene?
Janna explained a lot to parents that have children with these abilities. The patience she learned through God's strength, and to the parents not to give up, because these children are special. They have special abilities. She believes and knows all children with this special abilities that they have, they will accomplish God's plan for their lives.
Marty, it's a fascinating story. Let's listen and learn together. Janna, it's so great to have you back for another episode. Our listeners are going to be intrigued with a little bit more of your story of working with Sharalene, who was born nonverbal, and how you devised a method to communicate with her. My understanding is, very briefly, you learned sign language. And then the second part of that, which from my perspective seems to be far more difficult, how do you teach Sharalene, who can hear, but she's not able to verbally communicate with you as some of us do? How were you able to teach her sign language? That seems, from my perspective, one part, but then how do you teach her to process something brand new such that she can return to you communication that she understands in her form, but to us, this is a totally new world. Janna, I think you can give a lot of hope to the listeners who may have someone within their circle of influence who is nonverbal. Thank you so much for sharing your life experience.
Oh, I am so thrilled to be here with you again, Ron and Marty, and all the beautiful listeners. As you tuning into this, I hope you find value, and most importantly, I hope you find hope. And I hope that God gives you faith that all things that are happening in our lives, they're just not coincidences. I believe all things are designed to work together for good to those who love God, and that's his promise. And where do we begin? I'd say let's begin where it started, when I was pen paling with my husband, and we've been friends online for a period of time, for a few years, and then we met in person, and he shared about Sharalene, about her struggles. And at that time that she was nonverbal, and I had no idea. I mean, I was 23, 24-year-old gal, and I had no idea how to care for a kid, much less for a nonverbal kid. So it was a little bit of a scary for me. How do we adapt? How do I get to know her? If you've heard my story before, I just say a brief note that when I arrived into the United States to meet Roger's family and Sharalene, a day before she got hit by a car riding a bike. And the first time that I met her, right after we landed, we were given the news and we rushed to the hospital. And the first time I met her, she was laying in bed, unconscious, with all sorts of things and tubes, and I was just completely overwhelmed with empathy and love and compassion to her, fighting for her life. And as we were caring for her, she stayed in the hospital for about 5 weeks, and then she moved to the rehab. And as she moved to the rehab, there where I could see her personality, and she was just so eager to be loved. She was just so eager to try to interact and try to express herself, but she had a very limited capacity of what she could understand and what she could communicate back. I would say probably at a level of about a 1.5-year-old kid, that she knew few signs like mom and dad and keys and water and drink and a bathroom, go to the toilet. So just a handful, I'd say probably 15 to 20 signs that she would completely try to use all the time to communicate, because those were the only means that how she could express herself. The tough part here is also to realize, I think, is that although she could hear the sounds and the noises, it is very hard to say how much of that information she could apprehend, how much of that information she could actually understand. And she was 8 years old. We came to a dilemma as we were working with the rehab people, that they say initially she was diagnosed as autistic because of being nonverbal and because of her trauma from meningitis that she had after she was born. But as they were working and evaluating her and doing different kinds of assessment there at the rehab, they actually proposed to reevaluate her diagnosis and give her evaluation of traumatic brain injury, because there were different signs that she clearly did not express as a lot of autistic kids, especially on the higher spectrum of autism, express, such as withdrawal, focusing on one thing all the time, not willing to have interactions. And she was that kid that willing to have interactions and find ways to communicate to her capacity. So that's how it all began. And I'd say I had no idea. And probably if you're listening and you have a kid that just been diagnosed of either autism spectrum or nonverbal spectrum, or something happening, you have traumatic injury, brain injury like Sharalene did, you're like, where do we begin? Where do we start? I say, start where you are, start praying, start asking for help, start finding resources, whether it is your local resources in town or whether it is online resources. Start trying to connect with parents of kids that have special abilities, and don't feel that you are the only one that have the struggle and you're the only one that is going through difficult times. And what I found was prevalent is for her, because of her inability to express herself, she had hard time understanding when things were changing, and she had hard time aligning with things that were beyond her capacity to apprehend. Like if we would go somewhere to the restaurant or places, she would just get very anxious. She would have episodes where she'd try to bite herself or injure herself, or, just make a lot of uncomfortable noises for the surroundings. So I think, if you imagine yourself being trapped in a body and not being able to converse and communicate and express yourself, and also not being able fully understand what you're being spoke to, so apprehending the language that you are being surrounded with, imagine you're in a foreign country, you will have a level of frustration. You will have a level of, agitation. And I think the first word to start is really give yourself and your child, or those that you care for, maybe it's your relative or friend, give yourself and that person empathy. give yourself, and especially if it's your child, yourself and your child, unconditional love. Don't be so hard on yourself that you're not perfect or you are not doing something. You are enough. You are perfect. That's just the way that God designed you. And your child is with the struggles. Maybe sometimes it's difficult, and it is okay to be sad and cry and being frustrated, but don't give up and say you're on this journey that is going to unfold in a most beautiful, miraculous way that you have not even dreamed of. And now, if you look forward, she's 24 right now, and she's this amazing, beautiful girl that is such a hard worker. And in my household of 10, where we have 8 children, if it would not be for her, I do not know how I would even function. She is just my right hand. She does a lot of things for us and just keeping us all accountable and on the schedule and getting things done and helping with cleaning the house. I look at her, she's just the biggest blessing of my life. It's truly the communication and realizing that they do have potential. Sometimes when you look at the kids that have struggles, when you look at the kids that have challenges, you think, well, what really is out there? But we underestimate their potential and their God-given way of even the brain to rewire itself and for them to be able to gain and learn. So that's a little bit of for the beginning. Do you have, I know you have asked me several questions. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to reflect on what I've shared?
Let me just take a moment for the sake of our audience to reflect on what you just said. Marty and I so appreciate the fact that we know God's grace is sufficient. He will bring us through everything. You have now such a healthy attitude about everything, and you are very transparent and said, yep, there were times in life that you had struggles, you wonder. But I think, Janna, having gone through, or in the journey that you are in right now, with Sharalene being 24 years old, you can tell the listeners there is hope. There's always, always, always hope. There is a way to work through. God's grace is sufficient. God created us, and He created us for a very specific purpose. That's one of the underlying factors of all this, Janna. Thank you for that hope. And yes, to God be the glory. And there is a journey for you, Sharalene, all of our listeners, that there's going to be a great testimony through this. But thank you for sharing. Our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing just some of the mechanics of, I call it the mechanics, of sign language and how it was you worked through actually communicating with Sharalene. That just seems to maybe some of us that have never experienced this just seems to be a huge mountain to overcome.
Well, I would say do an experiment, and this is a fun experiment. I invite you to say in your household, whether you have nonverbal, child or relatives or not, even if everybody's verbal in your household, just give yourself an experiment of fun. Make a rule of not saying anything, and even worse if not hearing, but try to just not saying anything to each other for a few hours, and try to find out how do you gonna communicate and understand each other. And I find that for those that live together, for couples especially, we have a lot of nonverbal communication that we don't even realize we have. We kind of smile, we kind of smirk, we kind of, you ask your wife, are you okay? And she kind of looks at you. I didn't take the trash out yesterday. So we have this nonverbal communication in our face expression, in how we look and how we smile and how we show and articulate with our hands even. And sign language is a lot about that. It's a lot about nonverbal expression and how you come across. And I would say Sharalene and kids, I believe, with difficulties to have verbal communication, they're very in tune. So when we lose a sense, one of our senses, I think the other senses and kind of this way of absorbing information get more reinforced or strengthened in us. So what I found for her, she's very in tuned in little things and picking up on different signs of what is it about you want to communicate. And sometimes for me, I don't even have to sign. I just give her a look And she got it. So I say, take it easy on yourself. Number one. Number two, sign language is very intuitive and easy. And there are different resources you can look up. There are a lot of resources you can find on YouTube. There's a lot of resources and trainings that are free that you can find in the deaf community that are online. One of the best resources I found worked for us, for me to learn myself and for Sharalene, was this amazing episodes that were created by Rachel, and her website is signingtime.com. So it's like signingtime.com. They have some episodes on YouTube, and they have some episodes that you can even look up and pay on Amazon. They did ship CDs at that time when we were learning, and she had two children with special needs. One child was deaf, and the second child had, I think, cerebral palsy. She came on this quest of not only teaching her relatives and how to communicate with her child, but also creating this amazing, fun, and engaging series of short episodes and with the signs that children can pick up very easily and that adults can pick up along the way as well. So I think that's the great tool that's helped us. And to your question, how do I know that she understands what I'm communicating? So I think the other thing is that is important if you have a child that is growing up and you're considering, how do I educate, what is the school system is going to look like, is really find some resources and even find some support that helps with apprehension through pictures. And I think that before they teach children signs, they really teach children through communication through pictures. And let's say you show a picture of a bird, and they're like, okay, it's a bird, and then you can sign a bird. You show a picture of the bathroom, they go to the bathroom, and you could say bathroom. You say no when you want to answer. So you teach a different small steps in the same way alphabet. There are signs for alphabet, ABCs. So you show them the picture, and that's what I think we were lucky enough, because after her accident and after she got released from the rehab, we were contacted and reached out by school, and school actually organized a resource as a teacher coming into our house and helping her while she was recovering still, and she had a trach, to teach her through picture and board communication paired with signs. And because I was observing that and I was there as she was presented the information and the lessons, it was easy for me to pick up on those signs and reinforce them, try to broaden her vocabulary of being able to communicate. But to the point where we would just print the pictures, and if she doesn't know the signs, she will show the picture or she will point what exactly she wants. Let's say for even as simple as the food choices, you would say, okay, what do you want to eat? And she'll be like, I don't know what a sign, but she can go and show it to you what she wants. And you can print out the pictures of the words, or I think not easy, the ones that are verbs, maybe for them to understand, like running, but you can show a picture of somebody running or sitting or standing or singing or drinking. I think pairing that with signs was very handy for her. And as she was progressing then with school, I think the biggest hurdle for parents especially is to figure out the school system and how to get the best resources and the best accommodations for your child. And I would say it is a very, very tedious process here in the United States. And you have to be pretty much a fierce advocate for your child. You have to be on top of what is happening in the classroom, on top of what kind of accommodations they will need. Unless you are very much engaged, it's going to be pretty much a babysitting situation. I don't think your child would have an exposure and ability or capacity to learn and grow and develop their best if they're just being babysitted. So you got to find what are the best resources, what are the best placements, are there the specific schools that accommodate the children with special needs or special abilities. For us in our district, we were lucky because she was in the general public school in the beginning in a special ed class. And I feel that was not giving her as much influence and good educational ground in the first few years in elementary school. But then we start looking at what are the options. As she was moving into the middle school, we were looking at what the options are. And the best we found was a school that was specifically geared for children with special needs. She just blossomed there. It was phenomenal for her. We were just gifted with the most amazing teachers there that helped her to really expedite and catch up on her science. She started signing fluently. She started reading and writing and, communicating by writing notes instead of signing with those that they cannot sign. And I would say she was very rigorous about her schedule. I remember she was getting up in high school. My son that is in high school, 15 years old now, I have to get up sometimes to get him on the bus and get him breakfast, and he would not be ready. But for her, I had small children at that time, and she'll get alarm herself. She get up, she gets dressed, she get a snack, and she waits for the bus, and the bus would come by our house to stop, and she'll get on the bus and she get herself going with minimum to no little supervision from me. And I'd say this girl has just superseded all possible of expectations. And I know that it's just the beginning for her. She's still growing and developing, and I'm very excited to observe her blossoming into her adulthood.
Thank you for being very self-explanatory with that. A statement and then a question. I think you were very articulate in saying we are always communicating through one or more of the five senses: sight, smell, feel, touch, and so forth. We're always communicating with that. What you said is very important. Anybody can interpret a smile. I know in 54 years of marriage that sometimes Marty would say, I just saw the look on your face. I heard what you said, but I saw the look on your face. Sometimes the look on your face will override anything positive you say. So we know that type thing. I am very curious to know, did Sharalene, or possibly does she at times have times of she's discouraged, she feels she's not normal, anything of that nature? And I don't mean in any form to imply Sharalene is not normal, but I'm just curious if she has or maybe does periodically express that at times.
I think it's important to really tune in and try to understand as much as you can what's going on with your child, especially when they sometimes cannot maybe fully express themselves and what they're thinking about. And even with the sign language and the picture and the different formats of communication, sometimes it's not as easy, I feel, to get to this deep soul conversations that we may have. We may be able to open up some deeper things. She may be struggling with that a little bit, trying to find a way to express what's going on. I see she struggled a little bit more as she was growing as a teenager. She had a little bit more of a moments where she'll get frustrated. I think it's, hey, typical teenagers, especially girls. Come on, it's like I have a 13-year-old now. I'm like, okay, well, if you're in the mood, I'll just leave you alone. So it's the same. They're just normal kids. They just go through ups and downs like anybody else. And hey, when I have a situation and I'm upset, I may be grumpy for half a day too. We are human and we're imperfect human. I think we'll just need to give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back and say, hey, we're doing the best we can do with this thing, life that is just so complicated. And I feel that they're in this way, the kids that are nonverbal or the kids that have special abilities or needs, they're human and they're just doing the best they can with what they got. Again, just giving them empathy. She had some episodes where you're very grumpy, she'd be stumping or she'll be like banging on the walls or frustrated about things, and we'll just try to figure it out and say, okay, things are not going the way you want them to go to your room, calm down, and let's figure it out. Sometimes things don't go the way you want. And I think for children and even adults that are struggling with brain damage and with some traumatic injury, it can be difficult to have a certain expectation that even for us that, for those that don't have any injury, so to speak, and have a typical, maybe a functioning brain and way to communicate, we sometimes struggle when things don't go our way. We have a certain way of expectation. We have a certain way that we foresee things to be developing, and then they don't, and we get upset and frustrated. I think that's the same way anybody else, they do struggle. And I saw Sharalene struggling through some times, and I feel for me, when I was not positive myself about my own life, and then when I had the low moments where my relationship with my husband were not in a good place, and we were in a way somewhat of a falling apart, it was difficult. It was difficult for me to give her the empathy, the care that she needed in the times when I was in a lower place. And I feel, looking back, I want to give myself a little bit of grace, and I want to give her a little bit of grace, because we had hard times. And I think you can have, or maybe will experience, those lows and difficult times and challenging relationships, and where you're in the low, you feel like, you just don't have it anymore. And how do you keep it all together? I just want to encourage you. I think our life is this, it's not always rosy. And even in a relationship, you have highs where everything seems to be great and wonderful. And then you have lows where there may be dark times and challenges, and you feel disconnected and you feel misunderstood. So I think in those dark times is just don't lose hope. Believe and trust that those dark times will pass. They shall pass. There will be the light on the other side. There will be more connection, more joy, more happiness on the other side. So don't lose faith. If you are right now in the dark moment and where you feel you have hard time to even give, especially if you have a child with needs and you don't have capacity to give, start with yourself. Start filling up your cup first. If you have a phone and it's completely drained of battery, you can't expect much performance from it. So if you're completely drained and you're barely surviving yourself, you can't expect to pour and give love and empathy to others. So start with yourself and ask God to give you forgiveness. Maybe you're beating yourself too hard for things that you have no control over. And maybe you've done something or said something that you're still harboring and laboring and upset about. Those things do not serve you. Those things do not help you be more alive and vibrant and more empathetic. So let go of offenses. And what I found in my experience, sometimes it's hard to forgive. Sometimes we've been wounded or we've done something that is so hard to forgive. We have hard time forgiving ourselves, and we have hard time forgiving others. So for that, I say in my experience, I find I turned to God and I just talked to him. I said, God, my Father, I know I'm wounded and I know I've done some damage, but I can't forgive. I still seem to harbor on this hurt in my heart, and I still seem to carry that in my heart. But I also know that it's not healthy for me. And I also know that you are forgiving one. You are the God of forgiveness. So because I cannot do it, I come to you and I ask you to free me. I ask you to please free me from offenses, to grudges that I hold against myself. And I ask you to please free me and completely eradicate any offenses and grudges I hold against others. And it is miracle. God is God of miracle, that at some point you will realize you'll have nothing else to hold on. It will not be maybe instantaneous. Maybe it's not going to be like you're praying overnight, you wake up next morning, you're a chirpy bird and you're all, happy and forgiving. But over a period of time, when you trust him and you come to him in this way and you ask him to free, because he came to set us free. And that is a true freedom in our heart from all of these evil, dark things and seeds that seem to be cluttering our hearts and minds. He will set you free. So believe, and in the same way, do your best to share God with your kids, whether they are nonverbal or verbal. There is a way that God can shine in their hearts as well and set them free.
We're always communicating through one or more of our 5 sensory receptors. It's interesting to learn Janna's experience with Sharalene, to learn how she was able to communicate with her. At times it was very frustrating not knowing how to do this, but over a period of time, looking at facial expressions, knowing the touch of the hand, knowing just how we can communicate with others through our personal receptors, We are always looking for opportunities to communicate, and then is the communication effective? Are we able to correspond with each other? Very interesting to know how our brain works, how the Lord created us to communicate through various means. And everyone has the opportunity to communicate. Sometimes it's a matter of us determining exactly through our willpower, our persistence, our desire to want to accomplish, that we can learn to communicate. It might mean we learn that through alternative avenues, but there is a way to communicate. Let's work together. Let's see how we can most effectively communicate with others. That is great wisdom. Marty and I and our listeners sincerely appreciate your very positive attitude toward this. One of the axioms we live by is you can't give what you don't have. As we always want to share, as you said, keep your cup full. It's at times really difficult to do that. But if our disposition, our mindset is, I always want to be able to give, we always have to fill our mind to be in Scripture, to know how to be able to do something to advance someone else. Janna, on behalf of our listeners, thank you as we bring this session in for a close. I think it'd be very useful for our listeners to know from your perspective, and I'm going to address my question in the context of feeling maybe a little bit disconnected. You as parents are right there with Sharalene, and so you're constantly, so to speak, connected. But what about us grandparents who are spending less time with Sharalene? We are trying to learn. Some people may feel, well, I'm too old to learn, and I don't believe a word of that. I think it's more of a mindset. But for those who want to complement in a very positive way the parents, how can we as grandparents who may have less time with Sharalene than the parents, how can we do that? I think you have a lot of wisdom, Janna, that you can share with us, our listeners, how we can support you as parents. We're never going to replace the parent, but we do, whenever the Sharalenes of the world maybe spend a weekend with us, we want to be a point of continuity for the parents, never to replace, but we just want to complement what you and your husband are doing. I think that would be a great follow-on episode. You can teach us how best to do that.
Oh, that's so sweet of you, Ron. Thank you. I'm very blessed to have my husband's father, Sharalene's grandpa, in our lives. Well, his mom passed away right before we got married, shortly after Sharalene got off the hospital. He remarried, and we have a new grandma now that is a very amazing Christian woman. And they both love, I think, being in lives of our children, and Sharalene particularly. I think the most that the kids truly need is love, empathy, and just being present with them. And, I think just the simple things and simple activities, I feel that is just the best blessing that as grandparents you could give to your grandchildren. Hey, give a weekend, if you don't have too many kids, like our grandparents say, we can't take them all. It's a little too much for us because of their age. But you could take, if you're grandparents and you're still in a good shape, and you have a couple grandkids, take them over for the weekend for a day or two, have some fun together, do simple activities. I think whether it's a normal, typical kids, or whether it's kids with special abilities or verbal and nonverbal, I think we all speak the same language of love. And that is truly, you could sense what's coming from your heart. You could sense your intentions. And I think the kids pick up on that so quickly, and they can just sense those that love them. They seem to gravitate toward and have more fun with them.
Yes. Janna, thank you for sharing from your heart. We appreciate everything that you and your husband are doing through Sharalene. We thank you for sharing your love, your wisdom with our listeners who may be experiencing some of the things you have experienced, for passing your learning on. I think you would say to our listeners, there is hope. It can all work out through God's grace. everything can turn out well. The journey may be longer for some than others and maybe more arduous, but we like to express the fact that the best is yet to come.
Amen to that. The best is yet to come. Don't lose hope and trust that God is on your side. And in fact, He's not just around you, near you, He is in you. And it is amazing eternal force and strength and love that you can tap from. So use that. Use Him as your resources and sources, as your strength and power for each day and moment for you and your family.
Amen. And thank you for sharing, Janna. We look forward to following your life story.
My pleasure.
Marty and I believe love and care is a universal language. It's well understood that the tone of your voice, the look on your face, the expression on your face, the way you address someone, we believe the words you say are important, but also the way in which you say it mean a lot and convey whether you love and care for another person. I can tell you in 4 years of marriage, there have been more than a few times Marty has said something to the effect, I hear what you say, the tone of your voice tells me something different. I'm saying that to say we do communicate through our body language, the time we spend with people, the effort we take to learn, to adapt to, the desire to want to communicate with, understand, and relate to another person. Connected relationships have to do with, Scripture talks about a kindred relationship. That kindred is we're joined at the heart. When we're joined at the heart, we will be able to work with, we'll be able to accept. Christ has modeled unconditional love. While many of us might say we love unconditionally, the tone of our voice, the look on our face, the amount of time we spend with each other will be a large determinant of whether we actually do unconditionally love each other. As we experience different things in life, are we able to work through anything that might tend to give a person reason to believe, I'm not sure you unconditionally love me. It may be more so a matter of I'll love you only if, and then fill in the blanks with whatever it is. We are very impressed with Janna and how she has adapted to Sharalene and learned to communicate sign language. As she said, sign language is actually easy to learn. There are various methods of learning that, and then work through the 5 sensory receptors to communicate our love, our care, our empathy toward another person. We may need to determine alternative means to communicate, but we can do that if we have the heart, the desire to do that. The person with whom we're communicating knows if we have that heart desire to learn to communicate. And as we learn to adapt to others, we have the tolerance that we are willing to do that. Tolerance and acceptance, I think, are almost synonymous in this instance, but we want to work with so that we can establish that kindred relationship. It is through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, who has made all this possible. Can we share Jesus with you? It is our desire that you know Jesus in a very personal way, have that relationship with Him. It's not a religion, it is a relationship. As we learn Jesus Christ and His creation, His unconditional love for us, and as we have a heart desire to portray, live that unconditional love He has for us, others will see that in us. Nothing I've said is to bring attention to us, but rather if we have the heart desire to model Jesus in our life and everything He has done for us, we will have the heart desire to work with others, to communicate with them, to establish that kindred relationship. Let's work together. If Marty and I can have the opportunity to share Christ with you, we would like that. Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, @thecooperculture.com. We'd like to just share our life with you and the journey that we are on to share Christ with others with no pretense other than wanting to share Jesus, who is the person of our life whom we have the total fulfillment. Marty and I hope we can warrant a 5-star rating. We hope we can warrant your endorsement of this podcast. We hope you'll also comment and share your thoughts with us. Share also this podcast with your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections, your Instagram and Twitter communities. The more we share with each other, the greater opportunity we'll have to learn from each other, through each other, to have a greater acceptance of those within our circle of influence, the greater the opportunity we'll have to establish that kindred relationship with everyone. We look forward to working with you. Thank you, and may the Lord bless you.